the ever-present topic of COVID-19 and how it's affecting the management rights business. Here to talk about the heartening information in regards to long-term letting or permanent let complexes is Tony Rossiter from Holmans Accounting. Tony, give us some good news.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. Certainly the last 6 months have been a real whirlwind for us in the management rights industry. Right when COVID was announced and the pandemic was announced, border closures, businesses closing, etc. We were rightly concerned about how that would impact on the industry. Fortunately for long-term letting, we're now 6 months down the track. A lot of the uncertainty has now been resolved, and we've got a good feel for how the industry has been impacted. Early on, the professionals got together, the accountants and lawyers and valuers, and worked out a process for dealing with COVID in the context of financial verification. And that involved really developing a process of drilling down into the business and understanding how COVID would impact. In long-term letting, that presents itself in the form of increased vacancy rates, maybe increased rental arrears, maybe there are tenants who have looked to renegotiate their rents and paying part rent or paying off their rent over time, that sort of thing. And certainly early on there was a lot of concerns, particularly when governments came out and said we're going to guarantee that tenants won't be evicted.
That's right. That was a scary thing to hear.
Absolutely. Scary from the perspective that there was concern that some tenants would take advantage of that, stop paying rent and effectively squat in an apartment. And certainly some tenants have tried that on.
They gave it a go, yes.
But a good management rights operator has the tools in place to deal with that and have dealt with it now. And really, I would say that's behind us. In our practice, most of what I do is financial verification. And since COVID, really, I've spent probably 95% of my work on long-term letting management rights, simply because that sector of management rights has continued almost unaffected. And so we've done a lot of investigation into long-term letting properties, and there's really minimal impact on the majority of properties. There might be a little uptick in vacancy rates, but it's almost negligible. And the impact on profitability is almost negligible as well. There are one or two properties, to be fair, that have been affected. Normally what I'm seeing is Brisbane City, city fringe properties where there are higher rents and the demand has fallen away. They've been impacted with higher vacancies and a requirement to renegotiate down those rents, which are impacting on their profitability. And also buildings where they might be relying on a high percentage of international student tenants.
That's right.
So they've all head back to the country they come from, and so that's created a big void. And those buildings have found it difficult to replace those vacancies. But that would be a very small percentage of total long-term management rights. And the average complex out in the suburbs, you wouldn't even know that there was a pandemic. Rents have continued, vacancy rates have stayed low. In fact, many of them are continuing to increase rents, and profitability is increasing. So it's a real good news story. As I mentioned, our focus has been drilling down into these businesses and really understanding the impact, which again is minimal. And also a requirement for the bank and the valuer is to prepare a projection. And in our practice, we've chosen to prepare what we call sensitivity analysis. So we'll prepare a projection which will look at how the business profitability might look over the next 12 months. But I'm not sure about you, Christine. Certainly I'm not game to try and work out how the economy...
I don't have a crystal ball.
Exactly. So what we do is we look at different scenarios. So what if the average rents and the vacancy rates stay the same as what they have been over the next 12 months? What would that look like? We'll then do a scenario that says, well, what if the vacancy rate increases by 5%? How will that impact on the profit? What if rents drop by 10%? how will that impact on profit? And we'll do a series of projections that we provide to our client. They can then look at what the best case and worst case scenario is and make an informed decision about the business they're buying. And certainly the bankers and the valuers appreciate that and are able to confidently then lend money or provide a valuation, understanding that really the worst case scenario is not that bad in a long-term letting concept.
Good to hear. Good to hear.
Yeah.
So there you go. Other than student accommodation and very high-end properties, the words from Tony Rossiter are negligible, the effects of the whole pandemic in regards to permanent letting. But if you're buying a new complex, be sure you do get a hold of Tony, because he will equip you with the information which will give you a tentative forecast of what you might come to find in the future and equip you to make a better informed decision. So thanks again, Tony.